Come, let us explore how Buddha's path just got way simpler in 2025. Together, let us relaxingly recite. How do we transcend stress's control over choices, utterances, and over our choices, utterances, and deeds? The Buddha's Eightfold Path. How do we transform our competitive survival instincts from being our tyrant to merely being our tool? The Buddha's Eightfold Path. What about the holy grail of enlightenment itself? What if enlightenment was merely the mastery of the Buddha's Eightfold Path? But what is mastery? As a little children, we found the tying of our shoes to be a daunting task. But after what seemed like a great amount of time and tears and repeat instructions, we finally got so good at tying those sneakers that we could do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. The same held true for potty training, dental hygiene, and even bicycle riding. Likewise, we could so master the Buddha's Eightfold Path. The seventh and eighth folds of the path are mindfulness as well as meditation, and when practiced correctly, they are the key to the remainder of the path. Mindfulness and meditation could be the engine that drives the cogs and gears of the Buddha's metaphoric enlightenment machine. When practiced authentically, mindfulness and meditation could calm our amygdala, the seat of anxiety and aggression, and stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, the seat of empathy. This is why the late Tulku Thondup insisted that the highest love was not the result of focus or analysis, but rather the spontaneous and uncontrived byproduct of mere mindfulness and meditation. The significance of this cannot be overstated, for loving kindness comprises 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. The second fold's kind intention, the third fold's kind communication, the fourth fold's kind conduct, and the fifth fold's kind commerce. Persist in the consistent, enthusiastic, and correct practice of mindfulness as well as meditation, and we could find that our choices, utterances, and deeds flow from the right or effortless effort of love-centered spontaneity, which is the sixth fold of the path. But what about the first fold, the view of realities, literal impermanence and figurative emptiness that support letting go? We could sit in mindfulness as well as meditation and strive to see permanence, but find it. We shall not. Instead, we'll be assailed with perceptions of sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, and scents, ever shifting in a manner ranging from the subtle to the jarring. The internal is no different. Mindfulness and meditation rub our face in the ever-changing nature of our emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. Mindfulness and meditation are the keys that unlock our mastery of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. A mastery that he taught could be accomplished in as little 7 years, 7 quarters, 7 months, 7 fortnights, 7 weeks, or as little as 7 days. This is why the Buddha taught mindfulness and meditation. Cowabunga. But you know what? I feel like I skipped something, so let's go back. Okay, so let's go over here. Here we go. Okay, let's continue. Excellent. Now let's edit. Cowabunga. Let's continue. Okay, excellent. And now let's go back and relaxingly recite that which we just added. But what about emptiness? Every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Any good English teacher could remind us that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. Therefore, we have to ask the question, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could feel non-graspable to the hand? And there you have it, folks. The scrambled timeline of this evening's opening lesson. Having completed it, we can now turn our attention to something else. It is Rey Skywalker's Sunday evening. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. After approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping, this is the Dzogchen Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus. So that I could spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I could become your personal nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. For the remainder of this evening's live stream, let's play with the latest iteration of very easy meditation practice text, or sadhana, if you're nasty. Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, including meditation teachers. That means that that only 10% are described by Yin's spiritual matriarchy of being flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, whereas the vast majority are described by Yang's religious or irreligious patriarchy of being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Therefore, it should come as very little surprise that the majority of meditation teachers implore their students to actively concentrate and actively contemplate, also known as focusing and analyzing. Now, in terms of neuroscience, the only part of our central nervous system that is capable of performing those actions are discrete neural pathways such as those found in the medial or the dorsolateral or prefrontal cortex. The problem is that when we over-rely on that front part of our brain, it sets us up to experience the symptoms of depression, as well as trigger our amygdala, the seat of both the anxiety and aggression that are the polar opposites of the peace and love we hope to experience due to meditation. Fortunately, neither the prefrontal cortex nor the amygdala constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. Case in point, every time we inhale, we are wired to automatically access the sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. To help us to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, which is the opposite of the rigidity of concentration. Every time we exhale, we are wired to automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, divided between the lower third and the upper third of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to support both the physical relaxation as well as mental release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and even less defining. So as I mentioned over here, patriarchy is prone to, So patriarchy is prone to elitism. A great example of elitism is the fact the majority of Buddhist statues depict Gautama as sitting in the full lotus posture. However, we look at the most ancient style of Buddhist statue, the Buddha is depicted as sitting not in the full lotus posture, but in just the quarter lotus posture, wherein one leg rests comfortably upon the other leg, like the two pieces of bread comprising a sandwich. Quick pointers. Number one, remember our knees are only hinge joints. If we treat them otherwise, we'll injure ourselves, for it is our hips that are ball joints, and that is where we get to adjust our legs. Notice here that the Buddha, that just as our wrists can twist, so can our lower legs. That's why we see the bottom of the Buddha's foot pointing up, which protects our ankles from bruising. Now, the first time as adults we try to sit this way, we'll probably wind up being quite ungainly and asymmetric. That's fine. Don't force it. Just relax into imperfection and let time and impermanence do their work. Sit this way as best you can for as little as 5 minutes every 12 hours, and within a week or two, your body could surprise you with what it's capable of. Now, what's the most efficient way for us to cooperate with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system that are the key to the seat of both mindfulness and meditation? Simple. During each inhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb noticing, and during each exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb relaxing. After a minute or so, we may wish to practice the one-syllable version, and that's just fine. During each inhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, and during each exhalation, we could silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb is. Now, the moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I check for questions approximately once every 15 minutes or so. Well, good evening, Mellow Yellow. Let's see, take a closer look at your question. So, Mellow Yellow, please let me know if you're still there. If I'm Okay. So, Mellow Yellow wrote, I continue to have doubt in meditation. Fear felt like a knotted serpent in my chest. Nice simile. The serpent feels as though it slowly uncoils each day, and so practice continues in spite of doubt. All right, so let's explore this. There is a myth that doubt is bad and certainty is good. But both doubt and certainty are emotions. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever doubt or certainty we notice during our inhalation could feel as if it was melting into complete non-graspability. Now, of course, during the next inhalation, it could become vivid again, and that's fine. Consider, if you will, the pendulum of a grandfather clock, swinging left and right. When the pendulum swings to the left, there's nothing good or bad about that. When it swings to the right, there's nothing good or bad about that. It simply is. When we notice a strong emotion as we breathe in, there's nothing good or bad about that. When that emotion feels less graspable during our exhalation, that's neither good nor bad. It simply is. And so we have to remember that 90% of everything sucks. 90% of meditation teachers are, whether they know it or not, they're minions of patriarchy. They are rigid and fearful and superstitious and controlling and elitist and cryptic and competitive and cruel. And so elitists don't care about right or wrong, or they care about subjugating others. They care about controlling others and manipulating others. And telling people that they're not allowed to feel certain emotions is an extremely efficient way of making people nuttier than a shithouse rat. If you take someone who's already feeling the pain of fear, and then you say, "How dare you feel that?" You've just taken their pain and multiplied it, which is really sucky, but not in the fun, tingly way. Now, sometimes there are people in our lives that tell us this. Sometimes there are authors who tell us this. Sometimes it's just the way we were conditioned growing up, or the way we were conditioned by society. So even though there might not be a teacher or an author in our life scolding us for feeling fear, our conditioning could be the one that's scolding us. But here's the good news, is that you can feel whatever emotion is going on. You could feel rage. You could feel terror. You could feel despair. You could feel elation. It doesn't matter. We could squander a life indulging our controlling tendencies, trying to select what emotions we experience. That path will take us many places, but peace is not one of them. We experience peace is not the absence of fear or rage or despair. Peace is no longer fighting those things. Many, many, many years ago, way back in the 80s, I had a part-time job as in a telephone sales room, and I was really trying my best, but I was a terrible salesman. And I noticed my boss, Mark. And he could call someone on the phone and it's like, "Hey, how are things in Cincinnati, Ohio?" I love the Reds. And then the person would be on speakerphone. And the person would say, "Well, fuck the Reds." And then without missing a beat, Mark would say, "Yeah, they suck, don't they?" And pretty soon he'd have the guy laughing. And whether he bought or not, Mark was in a great mood. I said, "Mark, man, what's your secret? Man, I want to be like you. I want to be like Superman and have those bullets of negativity bounce off my chest, just like Superman in the comics." He's all, "The trick is to let them pass through you." Mark was a very clever, clever man. And it took me years to figure out what that meant. Many, many years. So peace does not depend upon what we feel. Peace depends upon what we do with what we feel. Now, it's not about telling ourselves a pretty little story. It's not about forcing ourselves to feel an emotion. It's about, as we breathe in, being completely vulnerable. Noticing vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. And as we exhale, giving our body permission to relax even a little bit. You see, we're already wired to do those things, so we do not have to reinvent the wheel, which is very nice. So our body is already wired to notice and relax in harmony with our respective inhalation and exhalation. That's why we silently and mentally recite this ease in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. And so what I'm going to do right now, instead of just, sticking my fingers in front of the camera, I'm going to push button 9 and go back over here. Okay, so we're already wired during each inhalation to notice. That's why we silently and mentally recite this. We're already wired during each exhalation to relax. That's why we silently and mentally recite the verb ease. So if we set aside as little as 5 minutes every 12 hours or so, and silently and mentally recite these words in harmony with the cycles of our breath, we will make progress. But what is progress? Progress is not, the measure of our progress is not what we feel physically. The measure of our progress is not what we feel emotionally. The measure of our progress is the mastery of mindfulness and meditation. Mastery doesn't mean we do it perfect. Mastery just means we make a habit of it. Mastery just means that our practice of noticing and relaxing, we begin practicing it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. So there'll be times when we feel healthy, there'll be times when we feel sick, there are times we feel comfortable, there are times we feel painful, there are times we feel joyful, there are going to be times we feel sorrowful, there are going to be times we feel angry, there are times we're going to feel scared. That's not a measure of our progress. The measure of the progress is our ability to notice what's going on and do something constructive with it. Even if that constructive thing is walking around the block while silently and mentally reciting, noticing, relaxing, or sitting on your tushy while silently and mentally reciting this ease. That's the measure. That's why the Buddha said it only needs to take a week to master the path, to get good at this. Remember the first time you had a romantic partner. Maybe it was junior high, maybe it was high school, maybe it was college. The first time you had a romantic partner, the first time you kissed someone, you were probably really, really awkward. But if you got to kiss that person every day, by the end of the week, you got pretty comfortable with the whole thing. Same thing with this. You are utterly welcome, Mellow Yellow. And now let us continue with our practice. And so what I'd like to do is take a few moments to review the lessons of the iconography of this archetype. This archetype is known by many names. In Sanskrit, this archetype is known as, well, this gal here, the color of a cumulus cloud, is known as Samantabhadri. And her nudity reminds us of vulnerability, because every time we relax, every time we notice, we are wired to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Now consider her partner. He is known in Sanskrit as Samantabhadra, and he's the color of the sky. That reminds us that every time we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. The beauty of this couple, known as Samantabhadra, Samantabhadri Karma Mudra, reminds us that the highest love is the spontaneous and the spontaneous and uncontrived byproduct of awareness and release. The stability with which Samantabhadra sits reminds us of centeredness. The abandon with which Samantabhadri sports in tantric union reminds us of spontaneity. This centered spontaneity is, the more we practice mindfulness and meditation, the more our choices and utterances and deeds could flow from love's centered spontaneity. And now let's play with these exercises. Let's Let's return to Milo Yellow's excellent question. His question was about fear. Now, sometimes there are people in romantic relationships who try to manipulate each other. And sometimes one partner will say to the other partner, I'm insecure about you doing thus and such. And then the other partner might say, well, I guess you just don't trust me. Maybe we shouldn't date. That's an excellent way to shut someone down and manipulate them. That's not realistic. What we feel is not an indictment. It's what we do with what we feel that determines our degree of wisdom. For instance, if someone feels insecure and uses that insecurity to have a complete shit fit and says cruel things and does cruel things, that's not wise. But if someone is able to calmly and respectfully explain what they feel in a way that does not try to coerce or punish another, then that is wisdom. I hope that makes sense. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 11 and a half hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's morning meditation class as well as group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.